Hey everyone, it's time for another thematic list build. Since we started with a filthy Xenos race, I thought we should give the Imperium some love, and I've cooked up something that I'm pretty excited about. For those new to the series, here's the deal. The lists we're building are single faction at its lowest level, meaning no soup. If it's a Blood Angels list, we can't bring another Astartes chapter, like the Raven Guard, to handle artillery. It's all about maximizing the core faction, while keeping things as thematic as possible. Naturally, with this restriction, these aren't going to be top-tier tournament-winning lists, but what they will be is unique, fluffy, and fun. So with that explanation out of the way, let's get into my list built for the Imperial Fists, codenamed Siegebreakers. To start with, let's go over what I call the 5 factors of this Astartes subfaction. These include specific subfaction rules, units, stratagems, relics, and warlord traits. Subfaction rules. The chapter tactic for the Imperial Fists is Siege Masters, essentially allowing your infantry, dreadnoughts, and bikers the ability to ignore any bonuses enemies have from cover, and you can re-roll failed wound rolls when targeting a building. While not amazing, the narrative behind this is quite cool. The first part got some new life with the prepared position stratagem being introduced into the game, meaning you can maintain some effectiveness should your opponent use it. As for the second part, majority of players do not field buildings or fortifications, but if they do, you have that secondary perk up your sleeve. Unique units. We have Captain Lysander. This guy is quite a beast. A melee monster with a Thunderhammer at strength 10 without the -1 to hit debuff that Thunderhammers typically come with. His unique ability adds 1 to leadership to nearby units, which, as I've mentioned for Space Marines, is just okay since you are usually taking the minimum amount of models that make up the unit. Stratagems. Here we have Bolter Drill. Activate it on an infantry unit in the shooting phase with bolt weapons. On each hit roll of 6+, make another hit roll using the same weapon at the same target. Basically, you're paying 1 CP for Death to the False Emperor on your bolt weaponry, which is good. It's not amazing, but I love the thematic flair that the stratagem brings. For unique relics, we have the Spartian, a 12-inch pistol weapon with 2 shots at strength 4, AP -1, and 2 damage. Its unique quality is that it works like a sniper, meaning it can target characters even if they aren't the closest target. Honestly, I'm not too crazy about this one. Sure, being able to target characters is great and all, but at 12 inches, you're essentially going to have to be getting ready to go into combat. Imperial Fists to me are ranged specialists after all, and similar to Captain Lysander himself, this relic doesn't help make the most of that strength. Side note, this would actually make a very attractive Crimson Fist or Black Templar relic, which for those that don't know, are successor chapters of the Imperial Fists who are better incentivized to get into close combat. Last up, we have Warlord traits. Sort of the opposite of their chapter tactic here. To put it simply, you treat weapons with AP -1 as 0 AP while in cover near your Warlord. Definitely fluffy, as it makes sense for you to fortify your position, but the metagamer in me doesn't really like it. Now, this series is all about making thematic lists, but it's also trying to make lists which are at least fairly effective within averagely competitive metas, like your friendly local game shop. Since most games require you to not just fortify your starting position, and not all objectives are always going to be in cover, this Warlord trait is a bit too situational for my liking. Now let's take a look at the list. We're going to take a quick overall look at each detachment, and I will circle back and talk about specific units and their implementations after. I think this format will be superior to my previous video, since you guys will have more context with regards to the grand scheme of the list. Okay, so our first detachment is a battalion. Filling out our troop slot is 3 squads of 5 scouts, with 1 heavy bolter in each. Our HQs in the detachment are a captain in Gravis armor and a lieutenant, and taking up 3 heavy support slots in that battalion are 3 Vindicators. Our next detachment is a Vanguard, led by a lieutenant with jump pack, and taking up the 3 elite slots is a chapter ancient, Primaris Apothecary, and a max fat squad of Primaris aggressors of the Boltstorm variety. And our last detachment is a Spearhead, led by a Tech Marine with Conversion Beamer, and taking up the heavy slots are 3 Predator tanks with the autocannon and heavy bolter sponsons, and 1 Devastator squad with 4 missile launchers and a Cherub. And here we are, the Siege Breakers. I feel we have most of our bases covered when it comes to dealing with the various types of threat that comprise well-balanced lists, focusing on ordnance and featuring a ton of shell-type weaponry between the bolt guns, autocannons, demolition cannons, and missile launchers. So now let's go through the units and I'll explain the jobs I have in mind and the general strategy for the list. The Scouts. Now typically, 3 squads of Scouts would be a pretty gamey choice. And while I would love to have Marines for that awesome Legion look, the Scouts' ability to deploy forward provide a critical role in this list. Being able to do so, even post the 2018 Big FAQ2, it allows you to control objectives outside of your deployment zone from turn 1, or screen your own front line, or my favorite, block pathing, all of which add incredible value to your game. How you deploy them, though, is largely dependent on your enemy. If your opponent possesses enough speed and rules to turn 1 charge you with fly, definitely deploy your scouts ahead of your own front lines so you can prevent your artillery and other valuable units from being tied up. And you have to do so with enough space so the opponent cannot consolidate into the unit you are protecting, should your scouts die. If your opponent is able to turn 1 charge you without fly or a teleport type technique, then deploy your scouts mid-board, blocking paths and or holding objectives. This is actually a brutally effective strategy. If your opponent does not have fly and you're playing with fairly dense terrain, they're going to be roadblocked by your scouts. And if your opponent gets first turn, you're delaying the turn they would get into combat by 1. And if you go first, you can get some cheeky shots in with your scouts, which, thanks to the heavy bolters, can also be used to fire off a Hellfire shell if there's an opportunistic target. Deploying at the very front edge of your deployment zone are the 3 Vindicators. I really like Vindicators, and I feel that they really add to our Siegebreaker theme. How you use them, again, depends on your enemy. Let's assume you have first turn. If the enemy is deploying in a castle formation with key characters at their core buffing their surrounding troops, we can use the Linebreaker Bombardment stratagem. It's 1 CP, and depending on their position, you can get great value out of this. Sure, it's hitting characters on 5s, but to threaten key characters that are otherwise untargetable with 3d3 mortal wounds is amazing. And it fits our theme of using siege to break castles. I love it. What makes it better is you can advance them into range, and since you're not technically shooting with them, it doesn't matter. And if you want to be really cheeky, after you do some 3d3 mortal wounds, you can pop your smoke launchers, making the unit that just became your opponent's new priority -1 to hit. Keep in mind, unlike other vehicles of this type, Vindicators are toughness 8 instead of 7. Also keep in mind that Linebreaker Bombardment can be used even while your Vindicators are in combat, since it's not really shooting. If your opponent deployed in a way where there are no opportunistic castles to break or key characters to target, you can always rely on the standard output of the Demolisher Cannon. It's best used against enemy mech or monsters, but if you point it at infantry, it can at least, potentially, roll out more shots, going from D3 to D6. And if you don't go first, I would definitely use the Prepared Position stratagem from the Fall FAQ. So your 3 Vindicators and also 3 Predators will now have a 5-up save against AP -3. And remember, our Vindicators are toughness 8, meaning everything short of a last cannon will be wounding them on 4s at the best. So, the Predators. Pretty simple. Use them to break enemy vehicles and monsters using the kill shot stratagem. Once activated, the Predator's autocannon's good volume of 2d3 shots at strength 7 will wound most vehicles on 3s. The heavy bolter sponsons will output 6 shots and will most likely be wounding on 4s. Both weapons only have -1 AP, which at first sounds bad since you could go with 4 last cannon shots instead, which have -3 AP and d6 damage. But honestly, I think this is better. You have way more volume here, and thanks to the flexibility of the kill shot stratagem, that volume is going to be more effective on a wider range of targets. Yes, when shooting at enemy mech and monsters with -1 AP, more shots will also be saved, but each one that slips through will be a consistent 4 damage from the Predator autocannon or 2 damage from the heavy bolter sponsons. And if your enemy has little to no mech or monsters, the Predator autocannon is still fine against elite infantry, and heavy bolters are typically used as an anti-infantry weapon anyways. The Tech Marine with Conversion Beamer. Place the Tech Marine near either the Predators or the Vindicators, whichever group you think your opponent finds as a bigger threat. With his Blessings of the Omnisci ability, he can restore D3 wounds to a vehicle at the end of the movement phase, which will help keep your assets performing. And in the shooting phase, he can shoot D3 shots of strength 6, AP 0, 1 damage. But if the target is over 21 inches away, the conversion beamer's profile becomes strength 8 minus 1, 2 damage. So it works out, because his target is probably going to be the same as the tanks he's healing. Put the Devastators on high and in cover. You want them to be difficult to charge, able to draw line of sight to convenient targets. Now, I really like the concept of Missile Devastators. Not only does it feel thematic, but also gives you good flexibility, as they can shoot heavy 4, strength 8, AP minus 2, d6 damage for armor, or 4d6 shots at strength 4, AP 0, 1 damage for infantry. Also, one of the few decent combos Astartes have available is the Flak Missile Armorian Cherub Reload, which allows for a potential 2d3 mortal wounds against enemy flyers. Next up is our command team, starting with the Captain in Gravis Armor, who is our Warlord. Now, while the stat upgrade that comes from being a Primaris Marine, plus 1 wound and attacks, is great, most units lack the war gear to fully maximize it. However, the Captain in Gravis Armor does. The Gravis Armor's toughness of 5 helps further improve his increased durability, but it's his mastercrafted power sword that really benefits from his 5 attacks, since it's AP minus 3 and 2 damage. And if he's fighting above his weight class, he has his power fist as well. I am not that partial to the Imperial Fist's Warlord trait, so instead I've opted for Storm of Fire, which will help by potentially adding additional AP to weapons fired near him, which I feel is pretty thematic to our Siegebreaker theme. His second in command is a standard lieutenant, with a chainsword and mastercrafted bolt gun, and should it benefit from our Warlord's trait, Storm of Fire, his shots will be AP minus 2, 2 damage. Next up is a fat squad of 6 Primaris Aggressors. It's no secret that aggressors can fill a vital role in Space Marine lists. The reason being, they are one of the few units within the Codex which can output enough volume to adequately deal with enemy horde units. What makes this even better is the Imperial Fist stratagem, Bolter Drill, which only further adds to their quite honestly overwhelming volume of fire. This is made even more effective by our Captain and Lieutenant's reroll auras, and the Warlord trait, Storm of Fire, which will help give that volume a little bit of AP. To support the aggressors, we have a Primaris Apothecary to heal and potentially bring back slain models from the unit, as well as a Company Ancient who can help these guys deal some damage before dying. And last but definitely not least, we have a Lieutenant with Jump Pack, armed with a mastercrafted bolt gun and a chainsword, which we will upgrade with the relic, the Teeth of Terra. He will provide support with his reroll 1s to wound aura to either our Devastator squad or the Predators, and should either be attacked, his relic, chainsword, and jump pack, combined with his 2-up weapon skill, will allow him to get around to wherever he is needed, defending our castle, making even Rogel Dorn proud. And here we have it. The Siegebreakers list is complete. If my numbers are correct, at the time of recording this video, the list comes to 1993 points and provides 9 command points. While Space Marines currently don't get too much for their points, I still think this would be a fun thematic list to field. There is a lot of redundancy for your target priority and flexibility, because several of the units have duality in what they can target. And that brings this thematic list build video to a close. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Feedback would be appreciated. Comments, likes, subscribes are the best metric I can use to ensure I'm creating content to the best of my abilities. Also, if you have any requests for future thematic list builds, definitely leave a comment under this video. And for those curious, I have begun the initial planning of my next big thoughts on video. I'm going to tackle something a little more on the darker side of things.